Hello, this is Edna White. I'm so glad you're with me today. I have something for you. Listen, have you ever doubted your abilities and your capabilities? Maybe. Even though despite what you have credibility, you have credentials, and you've built it over years. You still doubt yourself, right? Do you ever ask yourself if you were good enough, even the back of your mind? Do you ever doubt that anyone will find what you say is interesting or valuable, or why you would even listen to you? Have you ever felt paralyzed in the middle of a meeting just to remember everything you wanted to share in a minute and it was over? Basically, if you've ever felt like that, that's the fraud that's showing up in you, that you feel that you're not capable. And most class that as imposter syndrome, meaning that you think that you're not capable and no one would listen to you, and you don't have the credentials, that no one, whatever you say or do, will be accepted. I ask many women I coach those questions. Some are open about it, some are hesitant to share their feelings, as they label it as a weakness and try to push it to the side. How do I know that? I had all these emotions and feelings. They sometimes still creep in. These are the feelings of self-doubt. When they take control of your brain, they inhibit any of our feelings of self-worth. These feelings can shut down our cognitive abilities when we need them most and push us in fight, flight, or freeze mode. I know because the other day I had a meeting, and for some reason I was surrounded by people, on Zoom of course, that somehow I felt that I didn't have the right to speak to because they were more, I guess, rounded or more into that industry than I was. But then I quickly switched that off and said, I have something more to say because I have lived experience and I've done a lot of damn work. So I know what I'm talking about and I represent the community right. So, of course, that didn't last too long, right? So I pushed it to the side, and guess what? Got out of my comfort zone, or the zone of not saying anything, and moved into the zone where everything happens. See, we've adopted or inherited that caveman ancestors behavior. When danger occurs or it is perceived, we push our way out back into our comfort zone or into a safe area that we know that's good for us. Well, you're not alone. We all have felt that way at one time or another. This fear has a name, and it's called Imposter Syndrome. For the first years of my career, I was a poster child for Imposter Syndrome. From wanting to be invisible, growing up because of the situations that I was in my childhood, to being criticized for my hair at some time, even when I went to school. I earned my bachelor's degree. At times I spoke other languages, not fluently, but I don't like giving my resume. And I learned how to be an international coach. See, I was in the fields where mostly there were men. The territory and the industry was mostly men. So I had to pretend, which is another part of imposter syndrome. I had to pretend like I had it all, and I didn't have it all. I had to dress the part, and I didn't have it all. So I looked like I was well put together on the outside, but I was nervous as can be on the inside. I failed at being myself. I attempted to live up to the ideal self-image and traditional society as they defined it as success from the outside. But inside I was miserable, never believing I was good enough, feeling embarrassed, talking about my achievements, unable to receive praise, not feeling worthy, as if I did not deserve it. I just felt I was lucky, or I felt like the environment helped me, or someone I knew pulled me along, or I was the only one around at the time, a token, as it were, that somehow I managed to fool people around me. This is what I thought. I always was anxious and waiting for the other shoe to drop, where everyone will find out that I was a fraud. Can you relate to that? I always took pride on being genuine, but the more I felt like that, the more I felt like I was a fraud, a phony. See, the internal dilemma started inside of me. These feelings were so negative and so self-destructive that I wanted to do anything to lessen or avoid these feelings. I thought if I worked harder, if I studied more, if I got more degrees, if I did more of something, and I never said no, if I tried to please everyone around me, if I earned degrees or accolades and awards, I will be able to drive away fear of being discovered as a fraud. But everything I achieved just managed to increase my anxiety and stress, because in my mind, it increased the chances of being discovered. I externalized the wins and internalized the failures and the setbacks. I became fixated on not making mistakes. I avoided risks. I became reactive rather than proactive, working harder than anyone else. I was convinced that I was on top of my job, but it was exactly the opposite of how everyone saw me from the inside. The deep fear of failing stopped me from speaking up, from asking questions, for fear of saying something stupid where people would find out I do not really know my business. I was constantly waiting for the project that I would not be able to finish, despite my track record of successfully delivering it, to prove myself fulfilling sacrifice of failure. You see, imposter syndrome is a feeling of self-doubt, a feeling like a fraud, feeling that you have somehow fooled everyone around you all these years. They have somehow succeeded to fake it till I made it. You got that feeling before? Or you heard that saying before? That plagued me more than anything, and it plagues a lot of successful women than men. Though men suffer it as well, most women suffer it more. You see, imposter syndrome was coined by Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, who published the article, The Imposter Phenomenon in High Achieving Women, Dynamics and Therapeutic Interventions in 1978. Imposter syndrome. It magnifies self-sabotaging systems where we feel no, not good enough and not good, worrying about failure. It's a psychological phenomenon where you feel that you don't deserve it, success, no matter what you do to achieve it. You just believe in pure luck, being in the right place at the right time, around the right people. But it's not necessarily a syndrome or a symptom. It's low self-esteem, low self-worth. and low self-confidence. It's also can also affect successful people and has nothing to do with how educated they are, how many certificates they hold, how many awards they have. The roots of that syndrome might be the lie deep in their upbringing, their family dynamics, and their cultures. Why does it exist? The first function of the brain is to protect us, okay? And it keeps us safe from real or perceived harms. Unfortunately, our brains never evolved since the caveman era. It fails to understand that we are no longer in a continuous stage of danger, needing to depend on our survival instincts, putting us in survival mode. The brain will try to keep us in our comfort zone. The moment we push it out, it shows back up. It regurgitates every single challenge, every obstacle, every setback, or even failures that we either had or heard about from someone else. Our brain pulls us back to the safety through the 3F system: fight, flight, or freeze. The default of our brain thinking is negative thinking, which is the process of thinking negative rather than thinking positive. Now, positive thinking requires a lot more blood supply and a conscious effort, while negative thinking, uninvited and happens easy. Our backgrounds, cultures, genders, race, family situations, parents, and teachers affect our beliefs, attitudes, and our messages that we grow up with. That all of this contribute to the development of the imposter feeling. Did you grow up in a critical family that didn't praise you when you got an A that you received in school? See, then it imposed unrealistic standards and expectations, creating a feeling of non-worthy, doubting your own intelligence. Imposter syndrome is generally divided into three main categories: feeling as if your success was pure luck and you had nothing to do with it, you are a fraud, and discounting success as if it were no big deal. Does any of those sound familiar to you? So how do you deal with imposter syndrome? The first step is to start dealing with imposter syndrome as understanding it and remove any association of shame or disgrace related to it. Recognizing that we all have different degrees. It's natural and normal. I know, that's easier said than done. But when you catch yourself feeling as an imposter, start differentiating between the negative feelings and reality. Feeling strongly about something does not make it right or make it real. For example, if I feel so strongly about not being worthy, then I must be non-worthy. Discern between the negative thoughts and the reality. We have the power to reshape our lives for the better. When you start thinking negative about a skill or a thought you have, try to think about one proof of evidence that you've demonstrated in the past that is real. And the two thoughts: why is it real and why is it not real? The good news is that we do not have to be stuck in imposter syndrome forever. It's the good news. I did deal with my own imposter syndrome. Though it's ugly, head shows up sometimes. In my imposter feelings of misery and anxiety are not going to rob me of my happiness and joy from my own life. It can affect your personal lives where you can feel unworthy to be loved. The change needs to come from inside out. It's not easy, but it does benefit. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it's all worth the trouble, one step at a time. Imposter syndrome can work to our advantage. In its positive manifestation, imposter syndrome acts as a survival mechanism. So, using the fear and anxiety of making mistakes to render you sharper and more attentive to what you're doing to achieve your goals and dreams. Being grateful and satisfied with the results regarding of whatever it is. Right? Perfect example. If you lived a whole life in a situation and you finally get out, and you're realizing that you're out of that comfort zone because that was comfortable to you, even though it wasn't good for you, it was comfortable for you. See, the more that you leave situations, the more that you get over mistakes, the more that you are more attentive to the lesson that it will teach you, that's what you learn. That's the positive side of imposter syndrome. And that's what I had to take out of it. I've come through so much that I was an imposter, a chameleon, a people pleaser. And I came out of that. The more you try to ignore, avoid, or flee the negative thoughts, the more the feelings will attend to you. And they will intensify. So what I'm telling you is when you feel them, but get rid of them. Okay? Don't brush over it. Get rid of them. Don't scream over it. Don't put on a stronger voice. Don't, because I know for myself, when I feel anxious, I get louder. Although I'm loud anyway, I get louder. That's one of the things that I do. You have to know yourself very well. Know that when you get anxious or you get afraid or that imposter shows up, that you're not good enough, that you start to do something that shows that you have that anxiety about that situation. So what do? You address it. Oh, I do have that tick. Oh, I have a tendency to talk loud when I feel like the people around me don't want to hear what I have to say. Part of my journey facing my imposter feelings is truly accepting and admitting that I deserve the success I worked so hard for. I paid dearly for, and that I'm good enough and smart enough to demand recognition. I started journaling my success from way back to remind myself of my value. I took out my resume, looked it over, and it's right in front of me. I have one of my accomplishments right behind me just to remind me I'm good enough, to give me that pat on the shoulder. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And I demand recognition. You see, I learned the importance of assertiveness and how to say no. I don't have to say yes. And I don't have to have a comma after it. I can have a no with a period. And not with a no with exclamation or question mark, but with a period, instead of trying to please everyone. I learned to accept and praise and get compliments and say thank you, which was the hardest part, without turning red in the face or without feeling shy and deflecting my compliments by simply thank you genuinely and respond in kind words. I claimed my role in the success of any projects I did. I gave myself credit when it was due. But I owned my success and even bragged a bit more about it. Because who will be the best cheerleader for you but you? I deserved it. I stopped making excuses and dealt with my own limiting beliefs bit by bit. In total, I took back control of my life and I accepted myself inside and out. And I accepted my perfect imperfections. I understood the perception of reality is subject to the mental filters that taint how we act. The plan of attack of the imposter syndrome is two parts. Dealing with the fears, confronting you and bringing them to the surface. Implementing the constant commitment changes. Dealing with the fears. That's number one, right? Face it. Ignoring or hiding from the fears will just make them bigger than they are, and they will return in vengeance. Trifold, double, triple. Face it. 2, claim it. There's no shame in being afraid. We all have them. They masquerade as chameleons, different names and shapes. Owning the fear takes away its power by accepting it without fighting. All our emotions are valid. We cannot ignore them or sweep them under the rug or try to succumb and control them. Claim it. You get irate when things don't look good or don't sound good. You get irate. Okay. But I don't have the right to spill over on someone else. Get that right. Okay? 3, name it. Labeling your fear is identifying it. Is it fear of failure, fear of ridicule, a fear of loss, a fear of success? Whatever it is, it may not be easy in the beginning, but practicing awareness, living in the present, writing things down, meditating, asking yourself questions as, why am I feeling that way? Where did I acquire the fear? And how did it start? When you name the fear you are feeling, you give it face value, and you become able to look it in the face and begin to deal with it. 4, rewrite the script. Reverse it. Build the positive muscle. Think back about times where you achieved success. How did it feel to you? Write down how it feels to be hopeful, happy, optimistic, fulfilled based on memories or images that come to your mind. Or think about something that caused you fear but turned out great. Recalling these emotions changes the brain's chemistry to release positive chemicals like oxytocin and serotonin. Release it. 5 is release it. Get to know your body to realize how fear manifests itself on your body. Do you feel anxiety in your heart? Does your back spasms? Do you have headaches? Focus on the part that affects you. Take deep breaths. Deciding that fear will not control your life is the beginning. Then the only choice you'll have is to change, shifting your consciousness and taking action. 6, reinvent it. Fear is driven by reverse thinking to obsess about what could go wrong as opposed as to what could go right. So reinventing it by reverse engineering, it is the best remedy. Make fear your friend. Let it serve as a window to your future. Start thinking about it, the worst case scenario, and prepare for it. Instead of thinking what if, start acting as if. Say yes instead of saying no, and say no instead of saying yes. Okay. Implementing constant committed changes. Start by internalizing your achievements and start learning to appreciate yourself, your success, and your accomplishments. Empower yourself by being grateful for what you already achieved. Learn to be assertive. Learn to say no. You will never please everybody at all times. Learn to accept compliments. Practice deep breaths and meditation, even for a few minutes. When feeling stressed, like 6 deep breaths will help you disconnect your survival mechanisms in the brain. Live your life the way you want to live it, not based on anyone else's expectations. Own who you are, accept it internally and externally. Do not wait for anyone's approval to validate us or a permission to be who we are. Replace toxic thinking with positive ones, with an attitude of I can rather than doubt. I know I did that. I had sticky notes everywhere to remind me of who I am when I first started this journey, and boy was it fun. It was kind of fun for my kids too, because I always wanted to read everything. Get rid of toxic people in your life that show you why you cannot make it rather than why you should make it. Practice kindness to yourself first, and then you can learn to be kind to others. Believe that everything in your life starts and ends with you. You are the master of your destiny. It's perfectly fine to stumble and fall sometimes. Obstacles are opportunities in disguise. Life will never be pretty all the time, and it's not meant to be. Success will not be constant at all times, and failure is never constant. There will be ups and downs, and we need to ride the wave no matter how tall it is and enjoy like the surfers do. Every now and then, I still suffer from those imposter feelings. I realize that they will never go away completely. But now I know that what to do and how to deal with it, I do it. Now that you have a name for what you've been feeling, what you're going to do, overcome your imposter syndrome? Yes. If you have and need help with this, and there's an opportunity for me to work with you, to be your accountability partner, I ask you to please reach out to me. I can help you get things together. I can help your organization in a group setting with your employees. This is Edna White. Look forward to talking to you again. Thanks so much.